SOLAIRE is arguably the most iconic character in all of Dark Souls. Well, except Grey Rat, Shanalot, the Firekeeper, Gwyn, Gale. You know what? SOLAIRE is a big character in the Souls community, so much so that Praise the Sun has extended out of the community and holds its own place in internet culture. All that talk means that his gear must be good, right? Well, that's for us to find out. We're going to start with the Sunlight Straight Sword, and gather the rest of a SOLAIRE-inspired build I made, and see if it has any merit. What? Unable to acquire Ashen Estus Flask. Oh, is this because of how I cheated the sword in? So, in order to acquire the Sunlight Straight Sword, I was forced to give myself every item in the game. And this includes things like one of every Estus Flask in the game, but I did my best to skirt around these items, and only use the things I actually grabbed in the world. But for now, we let the Crystal Lizard learn that it can go skydiving without a parachute at least once in its life. Then, we head over to Gundyr to free him. Nice thing about the first attempt is that you get a few free extra hits on Gundyr while he gets up. And while the damage is less than I expected, it's still good enough for me. See, the Sunlight Straight Sword is upgraded with Twinkling Titanite. Because of that, it only gets 5 upgrades, instead of the normal 10. This means that, though the upgrades are slightly more potent than a standard weapon, the overall scaling throughout the run could end up being lackluster. With that being said, the damage right now isn't, and Gundyr is no more remarkable than a footnote on this journey. At Firelink, we buy a Prism Stone and a large leather shield to trade for Twinkling Titanite in a second. Then, we do the tree jump to circumvent the need for the tower key, and even though I do this on every run, it's going to be especially important for the routing of this run. The reason for this will become more and more obvious throughout the video. And this trick gives us an Estus Shard, the Silver Serpent Ring, access to Snuggly, who we trade with, and a Crystal Lizard who holds a Twinkling Titanite once killed. We also trade Snuggly a Homeward Bone for the bracelets of our armor set. We then kill the Sword Master for our souls, and upgrade our Sunlight Straight Sword to +2. Now, with a pretty optimal route so far, we're ready for High Wall. And I just want to say thank you guys for 5,000 subscribers. I appreciate each and every person who watches my videos. If you enjoy my content, consider tossing an interaction my way. It helps me out, and doesn't take that much time. Just a like or comment, or if you're generous of subscription, it all goes towards my goal of uploading weekly. Dark Souls with the Straight Sword is pretty standard, so right now, we're just working on getting SOLAIRE's armor. Step 1 in that is to free Grey Rat. So, we run to the armory section of High Wall, and attempt to grab the cell key that's hidden at the bottom of the staircase. The Estus Shard is easy enough, but that's not what we're after. The cell key is right down here, but making it out is usually the problem. We cover a lot of distance, and are able to escape. We'll free Grey Rat in a second, but for now, it's time for Vort. As far as we can tell, damage is almost identical to Gundyr, which, in case it wasn't obvious, it means that Phase 2 will randomly jank us to death. But once we come back, we don't get any random jank hits, and although we get frostbitten, Vort goes down in under a minute. We then kill Emma for an extra 1,000, and go back to free Grey Rat. Now in the settlement, oh my god, what is that guy doing? We grab Loretta's Bone, the Estus Shard guarded by this Evangelist, and the only Covenant we'll ever need. And here in the settlement, we get invaded by Hodrick, but this time, it's a good thing. You can easily rest at a bonfire to send him home, and summon him again. Why is this good? Because we need the Seed of a Giant Tree, and the Seed of a Giant Tree has a higher chance of spawning every invasion. So, after respawning Hodrick for a bit, we hold on to our Seed of a Giant Tree. There's other things to grab in the settlement too, like this Undead Bone Shard. We also want to help Sigurd kill this demon, in order to obtain a Siegbrow from him. Why do we want this, you might ask? Well, the Siegbrow is another item we're going to trade to Snuggly. So, we grab the Chloranthy Ring, and send Grey Rat on his first pillage, and trade the Siegbrow and Seed of a Giant Tree for the Armor of the Sun and the Iron Leggings. Now, I feel like we're equipped to take on another boss, and get Grey Rat back home. the Great Wood actually turns out to be quite easy compared to most runs. We pop the first set of bubbles before he can even really attack us, and since we did it so early, we're able to attack his Phase 2 weak points early, and pop one before Phase 2 actually starts. Then, after dropping to the depths of hell, we go on a streak of doing big damage, and after number 3, we quickly end the fight. Now that Grey Rat is back, he's selling lightning urns. We only need one, and we trade it with Snuggly for our final armor piece. We then run through the road of sacrifices, and run into the Crystal Sage. This boss is no more difficult than the Large Oak, because we simply want to parry the Sage. Because then, there's only one time the boss will teleport, which is the Phase 2 transition, and so we can take out the clones only once, instead of having to do it repeatedly, and then deal with the Sage once and for all. Well, I would say that, but we just so happened to hit the real Sage in Phase 2, which ended the fight in its own right. The Sage goes down, and we move into the Cathedral. There are more tools for our build here. Well, more tools for us to upgrade our Estus. Lloyd's Sword Ring is here, which is a personal favorite of mine. Kirk, surely jealous of Dark Souls 1, decides to invade us. But my sword is better than his. Duh. And after opening a shortcut back to the chapel, it's time for us to take on the Deacons. With a weapon that's capable of, well, doing damage, the Deacons seem to be easier than they are on my other runs. All we have to do is just swing a few times, and we deal a bit of damage to the health of the Deacons. Eventually, the main one decides to show his face. He comes in with some support, but we take his support out just as easy as the regular Deacons. The main one here sometimes just doesn't know what to do, and it takes hits left and right. If it weren't for the crowd, this boss wouldn't even be a boss. Not that the crowd makes it a hard boss, because this Deacon is going to meet Gwyn. Now climbing down to Farron Keep, we grab another Undead Bone Shard, and the Sunlight Talisman. We'll get to the Talisman later, but for now, it's time for the Abyss Watchers to face our Sun Gal. We do just over 100 damage to the Watchers, and our sword is pretty quick, leading to pseudo stunlocks and backstabs. The second Watcher spawns though, and as intimidating as it is to be outnumbered, we do about half the second Watcher's health in 2 hits. By the time we finish him off, the third Watcher is already fighting the original one. When the original Watcher wins, we go in to clean it up, and cue Phase 2. Phase 2 is a more straightforward fight. Other than some fancy rolls, this fight doesn't hurt too much, and we're able to spam the Watcher down. Now it's time to head up to the Old Wolf of Farron, where we kill a random demon, and grab Lightning Spear off this random corpse. Why is it right here, anyway? We attune our Lightning Spear, and test it out. It's surprisingly quick, and hopefully it'll turn out to be a good range tool. The good thing about the Sunlight Straight Sword is that it mainly scales with Faith, which means we can pump Faith for both melee and miracle damage. We move into the Catacombs, and kill this wizard for yet another Undead Bone Shard, and we take my favorite alternate route through to the bonfire here. We cut off the enemies from accessing us, and they still try to anyway. And now, we touch this Skull Cup. Oh, that's why. Well, this is some kind of joke, right? Well, now that we've destroyed that bridge, we can climb down it, then get surprised by a demon. But this demon is rather slow, so his attacks are not as scary as they might appear. And, with a Lightning Spear, he goes down. The Smoldering Lake has a lot of large Titanite, but we don't need that Titanite. so we just run through. SOLAIRE is also here. Just kidding. Who actually thinks this is SOLAIRE? This is a worm, not SOLAIRE. Well, now we have a boss to take on. And even though he's resistant to lightning, that's nothing a few sword swings can't solve. Even when the demon enters his baby rage mode, man, you're too old to be doing these things. Calm down. Anyway, we kill this demon, then Sullivan's Beast, and cross the gate into Irithyll. We do a lot of running to eventually make it to the Distant Manor bonfire. A little further up, we get invaded by Alva, but Lightning Stake takes care of her. And now in Irithyll Dungeon, we run through as quickly as we can, because this area rarely has anything important to us. The Profane Capital is this way too, but instead of it having nothing, it at least has an undead bone shard. Oh, and Yorm. We're able to throw lightning spears to stagger Yorm, and even though we run out of Estus eventually, this fight isn't a very difficult task for our Sun Gal here. And continuing into Irithyll, we kill an invader, grab the Ring of the Sun's Firstborn, and head back to the Road of Sacrifices for Morn's Ring. And now, with an improved build for Miracles, we head into Pontiff's Arena. Lightning Stake does a big amount of damage to Pontiff, and so does our sword. So my initial thought is that Pontiff won't be much of a challenge. And once Phase 2 comes around, we're able to do lots of collateral to the clone. Not that it matters, because Pontiff is pretty much dead after that. The rest of this area is just running, and we run all the way to Aldrich. Unfortunately, it seems that Aldrich is resistant to my miracles for some reason. But our sword is always able to come in handy for us, and it does good damage. And now, we're off to Dancer. Dancer is both really fast and really slow at the same time. She's fast when she attacks, but she's usually pretty slow to catch us if we're far away, save a jump attack or two, which are easily dodgeable. In other words, it's a first try victory for us. And now, it's time for us to start nearing the end of the main game. Our first course of action is to go to the Consume King's Garden. And after the straight shot to Osiris, we get ready to test our lightning damage on the dragon. And once we finally hit a stake, that's actually really good damage. And after swinging Osiris down to Phase 2, we throw more miracles at Osiris to massively reduce the difficulty of Phase 2. And once we run out of resources, we just spam our sword for the close but still first try victory. We grab the Path of the Dragon here, and go ahead and refamiliarize ourselves with the tutorial area. And the tutorial area ends, of course, with the tutorial boss. Though this boss isn't quite a part of the tutorial anymore. The beginning is, he's slow, and lets you learn the game a little. But he very quickly changes into a boss you're not ready for. So much faster and harder, making sure you can't outrange him either. He even tries to dodge projectiles. But he can't dodge everything. And eventually, he's on the back foot. And since he only has 2 legs, we can knock him off his feet. And with that, we're able to grab an infinite use Homeward Bone, and head into a place where sunlight miracles are real. But to see them, we'll need to kill a dragon. Thankfully, this one is weak to head blows, and we take it out in one shot. Now, we've earned the privilege of seeing our very own sun. But first, we need to grab the Mendicant Staff from these man serpents here. We can farm them at the bonfire right here, because this serpent respawns. And once we trade it with Snuggly here, we gain the Sunlight Shield. And now, have every piece of equipment, save a couple. And now's the time we gain some of those. We grab the Lightning Clutch Ring, and move to another piece of equipment. To get it though, we'll need the Soul of a King. With the only true caster of sunlight in this world right in front of us, it's fair to say that we're a little nervous. The damage quells our fear a tiny bit, but when we get hit, those nerves come right back. Eventually, we decide we should just try out our miracles, just to see if the damage is worth it. We get the chance, and it's safe to say that no, it's not. What is worth it, though, are the staggers we get. And they do sizable damage. But, other than a few time dodges, there's not much we can't overcome. So, a second stagger ends the fight. And the Nameless King's soul allows us to get Lightning Storm, which is so powerful, we accidentally kill the Firekeeper. Good thing she can come back. And now, it's time to run through Lothric Castle. Through multiple bonfires that we can't actually immediately rest at, to rolling through the fire to push onwards. And here we come to the Altar of Sunlight. And through completely legitimate and not at all unfair means, we attain rank 2 within this covenant. And rank 2 gives us access to our final 2 miracles, Great Lightning Spear and Sacred Oath. But we won't use either right now, because we have a lightning resistant boss to kill. Just to make sure, we use Lightning Spear on our boss here. And yeah, I'd rather not use that. Our reliable sword, though, is able to get pretty good combo damage, and though we died, we're back for another try, and an easy win. The Grand Archives has nothing useful for us, so we just run through it. And once we make it to the top, we spend a little too long trying to get this guy into the boss arena for some reason. But once we're done with that, it's time for the Twin Princes. Our first goal is to cast Sacred Oath, to increase our damage output. Tanking damage to cast is honestly worth it for the buff. Once we get it off, it's time to go on the offensive. We throw out a Great Lightning Spear, and it does a very good amount of damage, if we're willing to take some ourselves. Well, we'll take damage anyway, so it's honestly not an issue. Phase 2 comes along soon enough, and Lorien has slightly lower health in Phase 2, leading to quick KOs and massive damage on Lothric, resulting in another easy win. And now, there's only one place left to go. And while running through Ariandel, we find this hole in the roof. Has this always been here? Well, down the bridge we go, onto our first DLC boss. Lightning Miracles do wonders here, letting us engage these wolves from afar. And when they go down, Lightning Storm is able to cheese the Gravetender when he tries to dodge. It's very reliable to cast, and then capitalize on whatever comes up. And when the wolf comes in, Lightning Spear is what's able to take out the Gravetender. And the wolf on her own isn't much of a challenge. And now, we have to run through the rest of the DLC. Sir Wilhelm, despite being a miracle user himself, casts Vow of Silence. But Vow of Silence runs out, and we can prevent a heal with Lightning Spear. And after one pull of a lever, we have a Frida to fight. When the developers made this game, it feels like they forgot to make straight swords bad. Like, these weapons are insanely good on some bosses. Like on Frida here, you can just swing away a lot of the time, and you're mostly able to stunlock her. And with a final Lightning Spear, we make it to Phase 2. Phase 2 is centered around Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm will pretty much decimate Father Ariandel, and so when one staggers him, we riposte him for an easy win. Wait, what? Oh god. Phase 3 Frida is one of the most annoying bosses in this game. It's just a lot of running. From running away from the attacks, to running towards her when she disappears. And if you don't find her, you pretty much die. When there are attacks you can punish, it's only a couple of hits. Regardless, slowly but surely, we start to work her down. And after a very punishable attack, we get a full combo in. That, plus another disappearance, leads to us actually killing Frida. And now, onto the second deal. Whee! The demons aren't harder than I expected, for no other reason than that my hubris has gotten too large. But there is still some strategy to employ, like using the riposte to avoid damage. Lightning Storm is less useful than I would have thought, but regardless, the demon in pain goes down, then the demon from below. And there's another fake out. What is FromSoft's obsession? This phase 2 isn't any harder than fighting both of the demons at once, and that fact is exemplified by our use of ripostes in this phase, just like we used them in phase 1. In fact, that's how we kill him. And with some deja vu, we move forward. Long story short, it's a lot of running, and we kill a dragon on a bridge. That dragon has moved down below. Midir is weak to lightning, but it still doesn't do much damage. Our sword, trusty as always, picks up the slack of our miracles. The miracles still want to carry their own weight, and they at least do something from a distance. But they're no match for my sword. Not at all. And we have another run-in with Half-Baked. Oh, well, maybe he's a little more baked than I thought. Still not fully baked, though. And in the rubble of what remains of Lothric, we prepare for our penultimate boss. Gale's fight tempo makes a lot more sense when you're using a straight sword. With some weapons, it feels like you can never hit him. With others, it feels like you don't get a meaningful return on your hits. But with a straight sword, it suddenly makes sense. I've never been basic enough to actually use a straight sword, so I had no clue. We can get a lightning storm in every now and then, and stagger him too. So the fight ends up being pretty easy. And after this sick ash placement skip, we head to the kiln. And with one last boss to fight, we get to work. The damage is passable, and the Soul of Cinder's poise is pathetic. So much that we stagger him twice in the minute-long phase 1. 3 times if you count the phase transition. Phase 2 isn't any harder, even when we let Gwyn buff. And a Great Lightning Spear is all it takes to end the fight. And after praising the sun one last time, we link the flame.